Oh, that sounds great.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Dustin Eric Podcast Show, brought to you by Mimosa Networks.
He's Dustin.
And that's Eric.
Hi.
Hello. We're on episode number 12. We'll be talking about radio and antenna selection and then aligning those. Our special guest today, Jeff Jones.
Hello, everyone.
And Art Feldman.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you for joining us again on this super awesome episode.
It's good to be here.
So
Thanks,
are you guys
guys.
ready to talk about some antennas?
Yeah, why not?
All right, cool.
Excited to talk
So
about antennas.
we'll start straight away. Today's main course is antenna selection and alignment. So when you want to select an antenna, what do you need to do first?
Told everybody. Link distance, gain.
How far are you trying to go?
Yeah, how far are you
What's your
going?
coverage?
Here's
Right.
a
So
hint.
link.
A hint right here is
Are we talking point to point?
Design tool, huh?
Well, it depends on how far. It depends on what kind of radio you're trying to interface with. There's a number of variables there.
right. So distance, interference, what kind of what are you looking to do exactly? Is basically what
What's
you
your
need
coverage
to do.
area? Right.
So a good place to start is by mapping out what you're trying to do and find out how long your link is, understand the environment you're deploying in. The design tool is a good place to start. You can put in any of the Mimosa products. You can even add custom radios in there. Put your GPS coordinates in, and you'll get an estimated SNR, PHY, aggregate IP. You'll get link distance, rain reliability. You can also change your settings to increase or decrease rain fade to help better understand how your link will perform. Anybody else want to add anything to that?
No, I mean that's using the design tool is always something we've always pushed here at Mimosa, and something customers are getting really used to using on their own.
Right.
You got 5 gig, or are you the only 5 gig radio there? You're the only guy there? You're co-locating?
But
Yeah.
this doesn't just
It's point to point.
do point to point. You can also do this for point to multipoint, which we just had a large update for our design tool come out on 8/24 that has a lot of updates to the point to multipoint planner with additional antenna coverage patterns and things like that. So it's a good place to start to help plan your network out, to help try and choose the type of antenna you need. But it really comes down to, again, the area you need to cover for point to multipoint, antenna spacing on the tower. How much room do you have on a tower? Your interference. So you need a larger or a smaller dish to help mitigate interference or fit into a space on a tower that there isn't a lot of space. Also, Mimosa has integrated antennas that have the radio inside. It's all one single package. We have connectorized antennas where you can put a larger or a smaller dish on it. So those radios, some of them are 2x80, some of those go up to 1x80, so you need to know what kind of throughput you're looking for. Honestly, you just have to go through planning and figure out what you're trying to do. This goes back to our last couple of shows. It goes back to our last series where you really have to sit down and decide what you really are trying to do with your deployments.
Yep.
The end. Wow, that
And-
was fast.
Wow, that's a short show.
Well, I was hoping that people would jump in and add what they
No,
think.
you're doing great.
Yeah. You stated everything correctly.
I think the point you were talking about, your intended area of coverage, is really important. A lot of times I see where customers will put an antenna that is barely squeaking by. So, trying to have a good understanding of where you're really trying to cover in the area is really important, because different antennas have different propagation patterns, obviously. So a higher gain antenna will have a more concentrated signal, whereas a panel antenna will have a broader propagation path, and that may work well for close to medium distances. So I think it's really important to understand really what you're trying to do and how far you really want to cover.
Yeah, I think the problem you run into a lot of times is because you think of the radio you want to use, you think of the antenna you want to use based on the gain. You don't always think about the whole entire picture of where am I going to place the antenna, where am I going to place the equipment. So you buy everything, you get to the site and go, oh, wait a minute, I don't have enough room. Something's already over here, or there's not enough space. I can't configure properly. This antenna just doesn't fit. So understand, basically, talking about the whole design tool and the planning part of it. If you know where it's supposed to go, again, we talked about doing a site survey.
Right.
Get out to the site, figure out exactly how much space I have, where do I want to place it, then think of your entire solution. Do I have enough strength? Do I have the right antenna for that environment? So it's it's understanding the whole entire layout as opposed to just having parts and pieces and then putting it all together.
Sure.
Right, when we go into planning, for example, this antenna on the left it's quite busy there, but we have examples in our field locations with just like this. So we'll go up and look at the real estate and see what we can fit in and what height. What's the tool? What do the tools say that we need for an average height of the physical height of the antenna above ground? And then check with the management of the site and say, hey, we'd like to put X size, 34 dB dish or something heavier up at 32 feet, and then we go from there. If the link tool is happy and this gain on both sides, this will work for both sides for the link. Now let's see if we can fit it in the puzzle, especially with a busy tower as this example shows here.
Does somebody want to talk about how antenna gain for a point-to-point is higher than antenna gain for a point-to-multipoint system?
Well, I think the thing about point-to-point is obviously you have a single connection and you're trying to concentrate that signal out onto the horizon. So it's imperative that you have a high-gain antenna that can make the connection there. Whereas a multi-point solution, you're looking more for a broader coverage area. So you may not have or need to have a higher gain directional antenna. You maybe want like a panel antenna or a sector antenna where it provides the general coverage for that given area.
Yeah, you see a parabolic reflector at maybe just a couple of feet across, and we approach 32, 33 dB, and then for the same size sector at about a 2 foot long by X wide sector, you're half of that.
Sure.
Right?
Well, it goes back to when I first started learning about RF. Somebody used the analogy of a flashlight. So take a flashlight and you want to condense or propagate the beam, right? As you do that, you make the beam narrower, so it starts covering a larger area, a longer length, but obviously it's not as wide. So with the point-multipoint, you want to include multiple customers. So your idea is to cover a larger area, so you're not going to go as far. So the range is obviously going to be you're going to bait the range, but you're going to cover. You can provide coverage for more customers in turn.
Yeah, the gain is halved and quartered down as we go, and we widen up the beam widths, et cetera.
So I've seen some customers who have talked about or tried using sector antennas for a point-to-point system on both ends, and vice versa. Dish antennas as AP antennas for a point-to-multipoint system. While that might work, it's not going to work well or at all, honestly. It's not going to accomplish what you're trying to do, that's for sure.
I guess if you're trying to do that trick and you're co-located with, say, a different company, they're not going to be very happy. They're going to see you in their spectrum and stuff and vice versa, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea that Art shared about a flashlight. It kind of reminds me when I was a kid, we used to have water fights with the hoses, right? And so we had this one spigot that we used to use that if you tighten it up, it'll shoot just as far as you want. But if you want to spray someone in a close area, you tend to open it up, and it's more of an umbrella approach. Sure. So, having an antenna that will take the same amount of energy but concentrate it further out down the road is really important. And so I don't know. I always think about a hose fight. We used to have. You want to make sure you have it open just enough to where you can hit the other person.
On the weekends, I get lazy. I actually do that.
Yeah.
And I'll take the nozzle and I'll stand 60 feet back from the target area for the plants and stuff. And there's a tree there, 80 feet, 60, 40. And then I'll tighten up the nozzle. It'll go. Push out way out there, and I can hit that. But then I also by hand want to water half of the lawn too. So I widen it up. Now I just lost 2/3 of the distance, but now I get to cover more area.
You bet.
So since we're talking about tightening up the beam, we're talking about the main beam, but we also want to consider our side lobes. And there's a lot of cheap antennas out there. They're good for starting out, but they have really bad noise rejection, or they have real bad side lobes that will interfere with co-located antennas, or will cause trouble for yourself because you're picking up interference from co-located antennas. So you want to make sure that you honestly should spend the extra money and purchase a decent antenna up front instead of having to go back later replacing that poor antenna for a better one, because you want to have a good experience. Your customers need to have a good experience the first time around. So there's tons of vendors out there. There's certain vendors that we somewhat recommend. There's a popular one out there that's got RF horns, RF elements. They've got pretty decent side lobe rejection. They definitely don't go as far, so you're trading off, propagation out further, but you're gaining, noise rejection at the same time. So there's a lot of tools out there for the toolbox. You have to see what you're trying to do, understand what you're trying to do before you choose your antenna. So you need to do a lot of research. A lot of people have spreadsheets or white papers out there that have this data on it. It's also good to ask other peers about antennas as well, because they probably have first-hand experience with that vendor or that type of antenna, and they can kind of give you some feedback on how it performs as well.
Most of that stuff has the vendors will have a data sheet there too, cut sheets, and you can kind of compare those. Or on the websites and kind of compare the patterns, the gain figures.
Yeah, I mean, all good points. The problem I ran into with other customers and certain antennas is, especially the sector antenna. So you're thinking you're going to get a wider coverage area, but what happens is, especially on longer distances, you do get the coverage, but it's inundated because there's gaps in the coverage. So you're thinking you're covering the entire area, 90 degrees, but you may get 30 here, maybe 30 here, and then a portion somewhere else. But you'll have gaps in the area. So, like Dustin was saying, if you get a quality antenna that has equal coverage throughout, your clients are gonna be.
You mean primary lobe gain points?
It's not right. So it's not so much on the ends. Yeah. It's actually the
concentrated injuries.
The middle area is actually not. It's not spread out evenly throughout.
Right.
And one thing you need to consider too, talking about sector antennas, the wider the propagation path, you may be able to provide better coverage for multiple locations. But also remember, you're opening up kind of a can of worms that any interference is going to be picked up as well, because of the fact that not only is that antenna transmitting, but it's receiving. So when you use a wide gain antenna or a sector antenna, that you need to consider your RF environment, because you may be injecting some more interference than you probably want or like.
But same issue can run into with omnidirectional antenna. So
sure,
I mean, that's the same concept.
What do you guys think about Omni antennas?
They work.
Jeez.
They work in all directions, but you're not going to get the long distance performance that you would get from a more concentrated signal. One of the things that I think is really important is just to have a really good understanding of the expectations about what an omnidirection does and does not do. It does not do a concentrated signal, so obviously your client is going to be the weak link, and therefore you're not going to have the same RF characteristics with a panel antenna.
You're going to have some clients too that are further than other clients.
Sure.
Closer in, farther out too. So you really have to look at.
And the other problem
coverage.
is you usually don't have clients all around, even proportion all the way around your circle. So
except for Disneyland.
And one last thing before we end this episode is, I know there's a vendor that has a couple of new antennas coming out soon that have some nice side lobe rejection, nice front to back ratio, even front to side ratio. So be on the lookout for that. And so we'll see you on part 2 of our episode. We're going to talk about alignment. So we'll see you there.
Thanks, Art, and Mike, and Ian too.
Thanks for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe or follow button to stay up to date with our latest podcast, which will be available on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud.